Namaste everyone, welcome again to Bodhi Surf Yoga. Today we move to episode number 2 of the 8 limbs of yoga. And before we begin, as we did the previous class, we're gonna just do a transition moment. So we're gonna sit down. Try to sit down comfortably, bring your shoulders back, open up your chest. Keep your spine long and strong and close your eyes. Maybe lower the chin. Relax the muscles in your face and take a moment just to focus the attention on the breath. Deep inhaling. Exhaling. Feel yourself breathing and notice how is it that as you breathe in and out, you bring the attention to this place and this moment. The breath is a channel to the mind, the closest channel to the mind. It allows us to come here, right now, and to connect with that sense of presence. Feel the in-breath. Feel the out-breath. Let's get a little bit of a clear mind to allow all the knowledge that we are about to absorb to come in. And let's join the hands together in Anjali Mudra, right in front of the center of the chest. And let's come back to the intention why we're doing this course. And what is the intention behind it? What is it that we want to get out of this knowledge? And then slowly release the hands first, open up your eyes, and let's begin the course. Okay, so the next limb of yoga are the Niyamas. We have 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. And as I mentioned before, this process of the 8 limbs of yoga, this journey comes from the most tangible, which starts by how we act with other people, how we act with our environment, and then it starts going in. So these 5 precepts we call observations, restraints. We do it to work inside of us. The previous ones were to how we act. And then the other ones is how we act inside of us. The intention of the niyamas again is to develop a close relationship with ourselves, but also to start observing ourselves a little bit more. I like that Yogananda used to say that yoga is a path of self-realization. Sometimes we're looking outside for too long and too much, and we're looking for all the answers outside, and we're acting according to the circumstances outside. But the path of yoga is about slow down and observe ourselves a little bit more. And that is what the niyamas are about. Work on yourself and observe yourself a little bit more. So we start with the first niyama, and the first one is Saucha, cleanliness. Very important one. And I'm gonna go on cleanliness in every area that Saucha is included. It's just not about keeping the body clean. It's about keeping the body clean inside out and many other things. But let's start with the body. So I heard a lot when I started practicing yoga that yoga was a connection between the mind, the body, and the soul. I would say that yoga uses the mind, the body, and the soul to find this state of peace, of equanimity, of integrity, this state of deeper consciousness. So we're gonna start with the body. In the yoga, the body is this spiritual tool. I come from some of the 80s conditioning that told us that the body was just like all about the shape, how we look, and that was the most important part of it. The important part was like to be fit, the important was like to be in shape, how we look, how our hair looks, how our face looks, and everything. And then when I got into yoga, I started notice the value of the body as a tool, as a spiritual tool. We were given a body for a reason. We have this body, actually, is such a sacred tool to experience life. It's the one that we use to feel, to sense, to smell, to touch, to see, to admire beauty, to nurture our bodies, to dance, to move, to exercise, to enjoy life, to feel pressure, to feel pain. It has a lot of value. So in the practice of yoga, the body, it's a tool that we also use. But also the body keeps the memory of all the past experiences according to the practice of yoga. And this is when asanas start coming in. Asana, as I mentioned, it's another limb of the Ashtanga yoga. But it starts here. Keeping the body clean we do it through asana, one of the ways, because we're trying to clean the memory of the body of the past experiences that are registered on the body. There's even scientific background for this, but if you think about it, everything that comes as an emotion, somehow it develops, sometimes immediately in the body, so it's quite obvious, but sometimes over time. I'll give you examples. When we feel pain or sadness or a moment of tension or a moment of angriness, we might cry. It is a physical expression. It's our body reacting towards the emotion we feel. Sometimes when I get very stressed, I might get a little bit of a stomachache. Or sometimes when we get scared, we develop a lot of feelings over the body. Yoga is not about establishing the connection between the body, mind, and soul. It's about recognizing that there's actually a connection between all of them. And whatever we do, whether it's good and bad in one of the others, it's gonna affect the other. Coming back about Saucha, cleanliness. So we want to first keep our body clean. So what would that mean? Well, other than hygiene, which is very, very important in the practice of yoga, keeping our bodies clean, shower when it's needed, which I'm in the tropics, so it's needed I would say twice per day in the heat that we're living in. I know some countries might not be necessary, but to keep it clean, to keep the body clean. But also it involves like the cleanliness inside. So first of all, it's about like looking at the way we eat. What is it that we're putting in our bodies? And I'm not saying, I think that it's very important when we approach the practice of yoga not to be dogmatic. This is the right diet. This is the diet that you should be a vegetarian or you shouldn't or anything. It's very personal, it's very cultural, it's very, it depends on where you are, it depends on many factors. But I think we can all agree that eat your veggies, eat your fruits, eat real food. I would say that that's important thing, like when it comes to Saucha, cleanliness, nurturing our body. We want to fill our bodies with good fuel. Because if you think about it, every single molecule, every single aspect of your body is formed by the food you eat. So we want to keep that body nurtured, hydrated. We don't want to do too much harm to it. So that would be one of the first. Also, like exercising and asana practice, and could be a good practice of Saucha, because you keep the body, you get rid of toxins. But it's very important to keep moderation that we saw in the Niyamas, brahmacharya, moderation in everything we do. Yoga is that middle path. So we want moderation. And we don't want to overdo it, exercise, because it becomes a poison on the body. We want to exercise, and exercise might be walking. Exercise might be just walking every day, feeling the fresh air, feeling the connecting to Mother Nature, because that's another way of keeping that sense of cleanliness. Connect with Mother Nature. Breathe in, take a moment to be in nature and breathe with it. Feel the prana coming in, prana coming out. We're going to talk a little bit more about what prana means, vital energy, and how we can grab some prana. At the end, all these concepts of yoga, they tie together all the time. But yes, we wanna keep this our bodies clean. That way, sleep well, exercise, don't overdo it. Let's eat well. Let's hydrate our bodies, and let's be careful. We take good care of, keep them clean. But there's other areas that it's important to keep clean as well. People talk a lot right now about detoxing. There's a lot of theory behind it, and this is not a course, a program that touches upon fasting or detoxing or things like that. But I think that we focus a lot of attention in detoxing our bodies right now and fasting and all this and that. And I think more than that, we should be working on cleaning out our minds. That's another aspect of the body that affects Saucha, how clean we keep our minds. So just to bring a nice exercise that I learned once from a friend of mine who is a meditator, and I still use it not only when I meditate, but when I outside meditation. It's constantly observing our thoughts. And he said to me, look at which ones are skillful and which ones are unskillful. Sounds very subjective, right? How do we choose which ones are skillful or not? Well, I like that he said, skillful is any thought that contributes to the well-being of us or others, or the living creatures. Unskillful is anything else, which is a lot, right? So the idea of this practice is that we're in constant observation. Again, the practice of yoga, the first step is by observing ourselves. How are we acting? What are we doing? How are we reacting towards every situation? Yoga begins off the mat. I say it a lot in my classes because the idea of the asana, pranayama, and all these practices to find this state of presence that you can hold on for the rest of the day. Not easy. I always say it's actually easier to get in handstands or headstands or things like that than to be kind all day and truthful and act with integrity in everything we do. So this is an important part of Saucha, how we clean our minds, constantly observing the thoughts, skillful, unskillful, which ones come from love, which ones come from fear, and observing that. And the more that we observe that, and we encourage those that are skillful, and release those that are unskillful, it's like we're training the mind. The mind can be a muscle, and we keep training and training the mind, so the mind can learn how to be more positive, to call it in a way, or more skillful. I like skillful more than positive. Positive things about like more a state of mood, as in being really, really thoughtful about the way we behave towards the world. And also, one important level of Saucha is the environment. Okay, I talk in the Niyamas about decluttering. Keep it minimalistic, which is like kind of the latest trend, I feel like keeping things around clean. It's really hard for the minds and the bodies to be comfortable if the environment is cluttered and full of things we don't need. So we want to clean the environment so we feel comfortable in it. So that's another thing, another homework. I said like last time, let's encourage it this time again. Let's try to get rid of the things we don't need. Let's clear up the space. I like how a friend used to say, don't block the chi, he used to say, because everything we put when we put too much in our houses, in our cars, in our environment around, we block the energy, the vital energy to go behind. So it feels so good, like when you have your meditation space or your asana space, even sometimes we clutter it with images and photos and this and that. Let's try to keep it simple. Actually, what I do feel about these 8 limbs of yoga is it always reminds you, keep it simple. Simple is great. Simple is all we need. Sometimes we think life is complicated and hard and a struggle, maybe because we make it begin like that. But the Saucha and all this concept that we see in yoga is keep it simple. You decide how complicated life can be. And Saucha is also that cleanliness of the mind. I'm just gonna keep it simple in my body, in my environment, in my mind. That's the concept of Saucha. Let's move to the next one. Now we're gonna move into Tapas, another niyama. So Tapas means discipline and also means heat. And when I say that, one might wonder like how they two related. I like how one teacher of mine put it, is burning the impurities in a disciplined way. So Tapas is about creating, first of all, discipline in life, so we can burn the impurities. That only doesn't mean only in a physical level, again the mental, in our behavior, in a way we are burning those impurities, taking them down, so we can get into the center, the core of who we are. It might bring breaking down those behavior patterns that don't work anymore by doing this certain discipline practice like meditation. It might be breaking down the impurities that we have gathered in the body by doing a very disciplined practice of asana. So it might mean in many ways, but let's begin by the concept of discipline. I like that once, again, my teacher, he said, always look for the 3 Ds when you approach the practice: discipline, determination, and dedication. And this is why we should follow. Discipline means you stick to something, and the mind is going to have impulses, or life is going to bring you impulses for you to, I don't feel like practicing today. I don't feel like doing today. Let's say you commit to waking up every day at 5 a.m. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to meditate and do 5 minutes of meditation and 5 minutes of asana practice. You do it for 1, 2, 3 days, and then something might happen. On the 4th day, the alarm goes off and you're like, no. How is this possible? I'm not gonna do it. And the second thing, your mind is gonna find 100 reasons why you should not be doing it. I got tired, I didn't sleep that much yesterday, I have a lot of work, I need to sleep a little bit more so I can accomplish this work. And your mind is gonna keep doing that. Your mind is tricking you. The mind tricks us. The mind wants to not for you to control the impulses, the immediately impulses that the mind brings. And it's about overcoming that challenge. That moment when the mind starts doing this process of reasons or excuses is the moment you should get up. It's the moment you should get up and take practice. Because then you're actually, again, working towards certain area. You're actually, there's a term in yoga called abhyasa. Abhyasa is that sense of effort in the direction that you want to go. Discipline, practice, take practice and dedication and devotion in the direction that you want to go. The effort that you need to put. You want to get someplace, you have to work this way. If you keep walking back, you're not going to get there. So this is the practice of the discipline that is required. It might work for anything, and it might be by embracing this, as I said, waking up every day at 5, 6, 7 a.m. and do 5 minutes of meditation. That could be a practice of tapas. But on the other hand, it might be quitting on something that you know that is not doing good to us. Okay, let's say every day I created this pattern. We call it samskara. This is a little funny samskara, but let's say one day after work on a Friday, after doing a lot of work, you decided to go out and had an ice cream. So it felt good. It brought pleasure. The next week, you decided again, you had a good week, you're gonna have an ice cream again, and a bigger one, The next week, you decide that you're gonna do it on Wednesday and Friday. Then that pleasurable activity becomes maybe an addiction. Every day you're thinking, I want to have an ice cream. So you started having every day. And then the battle in the mind starts. No, I can't have an ice cream, but I want to have an ice cream so bad and everything. Because the mind already is creating, that thing is controlling the mind. So what we want to do is actually break the habit, and that would be tapas. It's about cutting it. It's about saying, well, it was pleasurable activity, but now it's owning me and it's kind of like not good for me. I'm going to break it. And this is such a simple act, but we can find many other deeper ones, things we have to let go. Again, I mentioned abhyasa as one of the key elements of the yoga practice. The other one is vairagya, letting go. So the balance between those two comes together in a very nice tapas practice. Notice the things that we have to start working on for self-realization, self-improvement. Notice the things that would be abhyasa. Notice the things we have to let go, vairagya, in order for us to clean those impurities out of the mind, out of the body, out of our whole self. So this is the practice of tapas. I encourage you in this practice, look for your journal and write things, one thing you want to learn, and commit yourself for a year. I wanted to learn asana practice, or I want to learn yoga, or I want to learn how to play an instrument. Because actually those, or I want to learn a language. All these exercises are actually creating a very good positive impact in our minds and in our whole environment internally. But commit for a year. And if you say it's going to be once a week, then once a week, great. But commit to once a week. Because the practice is not only about learning how to play a new instrument, it's the journey it is. It's the discipline we create. It's the skills we create along the path. It's the dedication, the determination, the devotion. Or maybe it could be not about learning something new, or that little hobby or business you always wanted to have. Oh, I always wanted to learn to like have a little business of, I don't know, pastry or cooking or something like that. So what is it that we can commit? That sense of commitment. And again, this applies of the yoga practice. And what we get from the yoga practice depends. What we're going to learn, what we're going to embrace, it depends on how committed we are, obviously. I give an example because I like to running. And you can run 2 minutes, or you can run a marathon, or you can run an ultra marathon. It's all good, you're running. Everyone's running. The experience you're going to get is going to be different because of how deep you want to go on the rabbit hole. And that's also a thing with yoga. There's so many styles, there's so many methods. And I think I encourage people to explore. Some people say, like, I know, just pick one method. No, explore first. See what works for you. But when you're ready, commit to a teacher, commit to a method. And because the important thing is going to be how you're going to react when your teacher says something you don't like. That's important. It's not sometimes we marry to the romantic of the idea of what yoga should be. And we always should feel good, and the teacher should always be someone admirable. Well, maybe some days the teacher is gonna say something you don't like, and it's okay. But also, like, let's find a little bit of commitment. I like to compare it with digging holes. You know, like if you're jumping to one method to another over time and not committing to something, you're digging one hole, then you're moving to another, and you're not going that deep. But it's okay. You might explore different areas. But when you commit to a method, a teacher, or something, you keep digging and digging and digging and digging, and you find something way deeper than that. Richard Freeman, a teacher that I admire a lot, he says, yoga like has this romantic relationship. You know, when you start dating, the first 3 months aren't that great. He's great, I'm great, we're all great, we're so great, we fit together. There's even like a lot of chemistry happening in the brain that makes you not only happy, but the unhappy situations don't feel as unhappy when you're in love. Everything feels perfect. And then boom, 3 months after, you realize that the person you're dating is a human being. And then you start seeing all the flaws, and then it becomes real, and then it comes with intimacy, and then the real love flows out, like the one that comes when you accepting the other person as it is. And then both persons, they bring the darkness, each other darkness in the table. And then intimacy can be quite intimidating, and then you have to take a choice. Do I walk away or do I stay? Going back to Richard Freeman, he says once that people create this romantic relationship 3 months with yoga. And I remember the first 3 months, you're kind of addicted. If you could do it once or twice or 3 times a day, you will do it. And you feel great, and it's kind of like you want to get the high once again and everything. And then one day you come out of class and it doesn't feel that great. And then you feel like a little bit of an injury. And then things are not great, and then you want to walk away and try something else. Well, the minute, that moment, that decision where you're deciding after 3 months or 6 months, you're walking out the door or you're staying, that's one of the most key ingredient, key elements of how the yoga path is going to be for you. Because what you get after you stay, it's priceless. And I'm saying this for the asana practice, maybe, for the yoga practice, but it maybe applies to many things. Abhyasa and vairagya. Of course, like maybe sometimes we give up too soon to things because it doesn't feel great anymore. Well, maybe the practice is staying. But then there's also the discernment to realize, like vairagya, letting go. This is creating harm in my life. I'm not gonna proceed anymore. And one example that I have under by Abhyasa and vairagya, yes, I have for 20 years I had a very strong Ashtanga practice, Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga. And it was hard for me to understand that my body was changing. My body was not in the 20s anymore. My body had 2 babies. My body had a lot of work and everything. And getting out of that mind, that letting go of the concept that I had to practice 2.5 hours every day, and then my life has changed, and it was more physically and mentally and demanded. Now, getting out of that area and realizing, okay, it was time to let go a little bit on the practice. That's another way of tapas, letting go. So I had to let go after injuries, but they told me that, okay, it was time to continue with the discipline, but change my practice. I was not gonna wake up every day again at 3:45 and practice for 2.5 hours, because now I had 2 babies and I have a business to attend, and I needed energy for other things. And the practice should give you that energy. So if you have nothing else to do, a 3-hour practice is great. But if you have 2 babies and a business, then maybe it's not that great. Maybe you need to, take a practice that works for you. So this is tapa, creating that sense of discipline among yourself, looking for practices that will clean and get rid of body of all these impurities. In some cases, there's kriyas. Kriyas is an alternative practice in traditional yoga that people used to perform. Even like the neti practice, which is like cleaning with salt water with the neti pot, was one of the kriyas, one cleansing. I scrub my tongue every day. That's a tapas and a saucha, cleaning out your tongue. And so there's many, and Ayurveda have many cleaning practices. There's some crazy ones that we can talk about it, but like for putting a thread, I haven't done it. I'm not that traditional, but some Indian traditional yogi practitioner will put a thread along the lines of the nostrils and pull it down as a way of cleansing. We can talk about many. Now, like in modern yoga, again, we talk a lot about detoxing, fasting, or everything. What do I think of that? Well, if you're having a lot of cravings and you're doing it for spiritual purposes, and you need to kind of like take a break, fasting a little bit or detoxing It's okay. But if you do it, we always have to come back to the intention why we're doing what we're doing. If there's a eating disorder behind it, or like a obsession to losing weight, then perhaps it's actually the cleanliness, the tapas practice would be creating a good, healthy relationship with our body image and the way we eat. So it's always important to create that discernment. And that is tapas. We're gonna move to the next one. The next niyama is Santosha. Santosha means contentment. Not only like joy and happiness, it doesn't mean like being all the time, cheerful. It means more a contentment that we're holding inside, a secret, almost passive, but very steady and very strong contentment. And one of the things that I like to bring out about Santosha, it's I remember that again on the 80s, we would talk a lot about the pursuit of happiness, like this end goal outside. And we have to take all these different states because we're trying to reach the end of the rainbow. And that brings me to a story of that I heard once, that there was this little fish once in the ocean, desperately looking for the ocean. And maybe this is Santosha. Like, we're desperately looking for something, we're immersed into it. And all we have to do is clean up all the barriers we have built, all the conditioning in the mind, so we find that we're swimming already in that ocean. It's maybe not something we reach right at the end of the rainbow. It's not something that we need to make a plan and do A, B, and C. It's something that we just need to realize that is there, that is here, that we just need to bring the mind right here, right now. This is a state of Santosha. Be in the moment. I like this movie that I saw long ago, and I kept watching it for maybe 10 times, Peaceful Warrior. Sorry, there's a spoiler here happening because this is right at the end. And you will understand it if you see the whole movie, but it's a book too. But at the end, what we realize is that we are every moment. That by being present, we actually can find this state of contentment. That sometimes the suffering is because the mind, the monkey mind, is jumping from the past to the future. And the past can bring sometimes nostalgia or a lot of regret. And the future can bring anxiety. But when your mind is here, most of the time, we're this moment and it's all good. So more than just trying to reach that goal outside of us, the intention, first of all, is to bring the mind right here, when everything is good, right here, right now. Another thing that I want to bring out that is a good tool for Santosha is the 4 attitudes, the 4 virtues. One of them is Maitri, and it's creating a sense of loving kindness towards our friends and towards all living creatures. That's a good path. Like always, like, for example, how do we build that? Well, just by bringing those words, loving kindness, into not only our meditation, but into our daily life, like almost like affirmation constantly in our minds. We actually are guiding our mental efforts towards that area. Sometimes we get negative feelings or emotions or thoughts toward people. So we want to switch them back. We want to create loving kindness. So when we find ourselves like having this mental negativity towards others, we take a moment and we wish them well. And that we're working on Maitri, loving kindness. Karuna, what a nice word too. Compassion. Creating that sense of compassion and empathy for the people not only around us, but all over. Creating that sense of compassion for those who are suffering, for those who are in pain. And also allowing our actions to express that sense of compassion, of caring for people who are suffering, which include us too. And then mudita, joy, getting rid of those feelings of jealousy or competitiveness and switching them for joy. Little examples. Sometimes we might want something and someone else get it. In the moment, which is natural, sometimes I feel we have to acknowledge what we feel because we're humans. We might feel jealous. We might feel a little bit of envy. But then we switch it back immediately. I'm so happy that person got this. It's such an incredible opportunity. And you might notice the more that we do it, the more we start feeling it inside. I have kids, and I see it all the time in my two little girls. For little things. One got an ice cream and the other one didn't. One got a play date because play dates are sacred. The other one didn't. And they feel jealous or they feel anger. But we feel that that's immature. It doesn't happen to us anymore. Maybe we don't get jealous because we don't get play dates, but we get jealous out of something else. So first we start by recognizing the root of those emotions and we switch it back immediately. I'm so glad that person got the opportunity. Just like when we tell the kids, we tell ourselves. That's great. Feeling joy for those people who have reached success, who have a good life, who enjoy life, and use them as a source of inspiration. And then the other one, I really like the last one, upeksha, equanimity, creating a sense of equanimity. And when I see the practice of yoga, it's about being good and kind, but also being strong, knowing when to stand up and knowing when to stand up for others and everything, but with a sense of equanimity. We might have what we can call enemies in life, people who have hurt us and everything, and developing it, and the picture would be to develop equanimity for those that have caused harm, according to ourselves, or that really has caused harm. Doesn't mean like we, it takes time to forgive, it takes time to let go, but at least, like, for example, we start by not responding with aggression. That would be a good practice of equanimity. It's responding with wisdom. The wisdom we all have inside. Responding, taking a moment, step back, and say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and act with integrity and equanimity. So this is a good thing. These four virtues are good. I think they're really good to take in consideration when we're thinking about finding that state of contentment, of Santosha. Also, like always being in observing what is going on inside, and when we find something negative inside, we go to the root. The root, and I think I mentioned it before on the Niyamas. What is that root that is causing us pain? We always are going to realize that we think it's outside until we really, really start being truthful with ourselves and we find the root inside. What is the root? Maybe it's about something that is happening outside is affecting me because I don't feel loved enough, because I don't feel accepted, because I don't feel enough. And I want to be enough because I had created this conditioning in my mind that by being enough, I'm good and I'm someone who deserves to be loved. So always find the good, and always we create a lot of stories in our mind. Sometimes someone says something, but the story we create in our minds is completely different. I give you an example, a funny example. Husband and wife. The husband and wife are about to go out, and the husband will turn to the wife and say, "Are you wearing that?" And that immediately for the wife, maybe the husband didn't mean anything, but the wife is creating already a story. What does that mean? Are you calling me fat? Are you calling me this? Are you calling me that? We build a lot of stories in our heads. So maybe for a good practice of contentment is not to create assumptions. Try to not create all these stories in our heads that create so much drama, unnecessary drama and conflict in our life. I like when I hear pain, it's inevitable, but suffering is optional. There's many times where we just decide that we want to suffer for any reason, but it's our decision. So Santosha means find this state of contentment, being more aware of what we're thinking and why we're thinking what we're thinking, and finding the root of that. It means develop this sense of loving kindness, of compassion and empathy and caring, of gratitude too, of joy and equanimity. And always constantly remember these words and affirmations so they become strong inside of us. And also it means develop this state of mindfulness, being in the present moment. And the next niyama is Svadhyaya, self-observance, self-study, creating knowledge. But what type of knowledge? But let's start with self-study. Study ourselves, and I have going over this many times. Yoga is a constant observation that goes beyond the yoga mat. It's constantly observing our thoughts first, and how they develop in our words, and how they develop in our actions, and how they develop in our character. There's an Upanishad that says, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your character. And watch your character as it becomes your destiny. So sometimes we think that the things that end up happening to us are completely on the circumstances outside. But maybe we created way behind in here. And so with yoga, we want to be in a constant observation of the way we act, the way we think, the way we go about life. And one of the things we want to keep in check is the ego. The ego is one of the causes, the roots of suffering. The ego is not that the whole ego is bad. I mean, we need the ego to operate in this world. It's what gives me a name. It's what gives me like tasks to do and identify with something so I function in this world. But the problem, one of the problems with the ego is that it lives sometimes in a constant state of dissatisfaction. It's a natural state of the ego, always wanting more. It's never good enough. So always wanting more, whether it's of us or of others. So if we don't keep that ego in check, we're always going to be asking ourselves more and more and more until the point that we create this unreal image of who we want to be. And we are unhappy because we never reach that image. It was the unsatisfied ego. Or sometimes we do it to people. We create so much control and expectations over people because our ego tells us that in order for us to be happy, people have to be certain ways and do certain things for us. So we want to keep, like in this self-observation, we want to keep the ego in check and notice that although there's some work to be done, we're good the way we are. And people are also fighting their own battles and being in their own path. And we respect that. And we're fine. And by being okay, we're allowing everyone else to feel comfortable with who they are. It's this ripple effect. It's the transmission of energy. At the end, I feel like when we're teaching, the teachers of yoga, more than teaching the basics, the asana, the this and that, we're trying to transmit certain type of energy. That's the secret of the yoga practice. And we want to transmit an energy that comes from the heart, not from the conditioned mind, but from the heart. It's very subtle, but it creates magic in everyone's life. So we want to keep that observation of who we are. And also we want to, in studying, in the traditional aspect of Svadhyaya, we really encourage to read, the sacred textures, the Yoga Sutra, studied the Gita and things like that, which is great. But I'm trying to bring these concepts of also modern life, and I encourage everyone that is listening to this to be really careful, including myself, to what we watch, what we read, the people we surround with. Because all of those things are going to affect our energy and who we are. It's I used to hear when I was a child, like, you don't be affected by everyone else's opinions and everything like that. And I will change it a little bit. It's not that everyone's opinions matter, but let's be picky about whose opinions are we're gonna listen to. Let's be picky about whose opinions of myself I'm gonna take from other people. So let's not take everyone's opinion into like how we should live our life, but maybe like who do we relate to, what we read, what we listen, and everything has an impact on us. The more that we follow the yoga path, the more we start noticing how everything has an impact on us. The environment we surround, the people we surround, the relationships we create, the books we read, the movies we watch. Yes, and I'm saying all this, and yes, I have binged Netflix many times. But the more that we follow the yoga path, the more we start noticing that it does affect the mind someplace. It does affect our behavior. So let's be more careful, more picky. It's a good area to be picky. The knowledge we're acquiring, the information we're gathering. Careful on social media. There's a lot of bits of information that are constantly entering their head. It not only alters the chemistry in our brains, that doesn't contribute that much for meditation, but it also alters getting bites of information. See, like maybe do it as an experiment. See how like it affects the brain. I like to close this niyama by a tale that I heard once from Native American Indians. It turns out that there was one time a father and the son having this talk, and the father goes and said, look, inside of us, there's two wolves. One of the wolves is full of anger, resentment, sadness, and negative feelings like that, rage, hate. And the other one is filled of love, compassion, kindness, caring, gratitude. And they're constantly fighting among each other. And the son asks, who wins? Whatever wolf you feed the most. So just something to process. Every time we have a conflict, every time we have drama or constantly, what wolf are we feeding? Because it's going to define our path in life. The external circumstances, whether we want to believe it or not, are going to be affected by what is going on between those two wolves inside of us. And we're going to then move to the last niyama, a beautiful way to close these internal observances. It's called Isvara Pranidhana. And Isvara Pranidhana, it's about, in traditional terms, and this is like why I always I didn't want to create conflict when I was getting into this in asanas practice, because it's devotion to God. And then some people get afraid and say, this is a religious practice and other things. So let's change it into something that goes deeper behind that. It's beyond like whatever concept we have, religious concept we have. It's more about realizing the divine mystery that we're submerged into it. And living a life with devotion, just as is, everything is sacred. Nature is sacred, life is sacred, every breath is sacred. And if, according to this concept, we will change so many things if we honor the sacredness of life into every day. When I traveled to India, I remember liking a lot the sacredness of that I would see in the spiritual environment. I would see mix in everything. I would get up at 4 a.m. to go to the yoga shala to go practice, and I would hear the chanting and the praying all around it. And it's mixed among many other things, many daily life. I remember when I started practicing yoga, and even before that, when I was a teenager and a child, it was like we had to create compartments for everything. So this was work, this was personal life, and this was exercising, and this was spirituality. And I would jump from one compartment to another. But I now see that spirituality is something that we might want to be immersed of, and apply it in everything. Apply it in our jobs. How how would that change our lives? Like if we are apply spirituality in our work, not only in the relationship we develop inside the work, but also in the way we see working not only as a tool to gain money or for financial purposes, but as a service we provide to this world. Maybe it would change what we decide we want to develop our lives into. Maybe it would change like the work, or even if we cannot change the work or follow our dharma, it would change the way we actually provide service. Because there's two options. Sometimes life brings like opens up for us to do what we love, and that is great. But also sometimes we have to learn how to love what we do, and that is also great. Because at the end we're serving the world, and we're being placed in that place for a moment for certain mysterious reasons. And so going back about Isvara Pranidhana is develop that state of devotion and sacredness of life. Good exercise that I like to practice. We get caught up in things that maybe the mind gets lazy and doesn't want to do much work, or maybe we just get caught up in the moment of being trapped in social media, scrolling down, watching TV until midnight or things like that. And so that creates an impact of we call it tamas in Ayurveda and in yoga, this heavy state in the mind and in the body. So we want to go back into a sattvic state, we call it. Sattvic state is a state of like we feel blessed, we feel blissful. So it's a good idea when we're getting caught up in hours and hours of doing something that is creating more heaviness in the mind and in the body. Stop it and say, for 5 minutes, I'm going to light up a candle and meditate. Just break it and honor again the sacredness of life. For one moment, okay, I might continue doing the social media, but I'm going to stop right now and I'm going to walk barefoot in nature for 5 minutes. I bet you won't come back to social media. I bet you won't come back to watch movies. I bet you would like to stay in the state of sacredness. One of the things that it's important when we honor to honor life, it's to acknowledge that life is very fragile and vulnerable. We're right here, and we don't know for how long. But that is actually, instead of like creating fear should create a state of sacredness. Because when we know that we could be gone any moment, it changed the game. And we don't know when. We don't know when or how. And yes, it brings a lot of fear and uncertainty. How about if we actually use that to actually be present, mindful, and enjoy the sacredness of every moment that we are being given, and realize that life is nothing but a miracle. Nature is quite an expression. You see every process that happens on every single living creature in nature, and you notice that life is a miracle. So our actions in Isvara Pranidhana, it's an invitation to honor that sacredness. It's more like internal state. Goes deeper and deeper when it comes to the Niyamas. And this is how we close the chapter of the Niyamas. A lot of information to chew on. So take a few days, go back to the information. Remember the practices given in this week. Try to practice some before we jump into the next link. Namaste.